Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to Reflected, a ham radio operator's miscellany. This is episode 7, More Skills, More Better. My name is Alan, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. As I'm sure you've already noticed, there's some background noise occurring currently. It's quite warm in my little lab here, so got the air conditioner running in the background, so it is what it is. Hopefully it's not too distracting. So, oh man, what's new? Well, the weather's starting to turn nice, so that means in the frozen North Country where I live, it gets very busy for us, so we try to maximize the outdoor time as much as possible because it's so limited for us up here. So it's not it's not super conducive to making YouTube videos and podcasts and the like. So I will do my best, but you may notice a bit more sporadic uploading during the summer. So I apologize for that, but it is what it is. So anyway, more skills, more better. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes in amateur radio we can get kind of, I don't know, stagnated, whatever. We can get in a rut, we'll say. If we're working on a certain type of project or a certain type of projects, we can kind of limit ourselves in some regards as to what we can do. Say for instance, you all you like to do is participate in Parks on the Air, and while there's nothing wrong with Parks on the Air, there's so much more in amateur radio that one could partake in. You're really kind of missing out if that's all you want to do. There's also the the more technical side of things. The making or maker aspect of it. Building things, building projects. Man, there's a whole can of worms there, man, and it's a lot of fun. It can be expensive, but well, I shouldn't say it can be expensive. I mean, it can be, but it's only really as expensive as you make it. You know what I mean? And that's another aspect of it where you can get yourself kind of locked into a rut, I guess, if you will. Say for instance, every time you do an electronics project, you immediately go to the 1960s Verboard and use through-hole components and the old trusty dual output Weller soldering iron. Like I said, while there's nothing strictly wrong with that, in a lot of ways that kind of holds you back to doing the more compact, more efficient designs, more complex designs. And the type of person, and maybe this is just me, but it seemed like the type of person that gets into amateur radio is the type of person who's curious about the world, likes to learn new things. And if you're just sticking to like through-hole, let's use through-hole components as an example. Let's say you're just sticking to through-hole components. Well, through-hole components are actually starting to get a bit harder now to find. The Verboard certainly is getting harder and harder to find. And not to mention that using through-hole components, I think, at least in my opinion, now that I've learned to use and become more comfortable with surface mount technology, through-hole to me is it's a lot slower way to build things. It's less efficient. It takes up a lot more space. It's not necessarily any more difficult or easy. A lot of people seem to get scared or intimidated of through surface mount components because of the small size. And yes, you can get surface mount components that are extremely small, smaller than a grain of rice. But you don't have to go that small. You can get some relatively large surface mount components. Yes, you're going to need some different soldering equipment and reworking equipment. It's definitely going to require a new skill set. Like I said, this is all part of the hobby. This is all part of the growth. It's part of the journey that we must make as amateur radios and amateur radio operators and makers, DIYers, if you will. More and more, if not, pretty much all of our amateur radio equipment we buy off the shelf now is all surface mount components. So if you want to repair this stuff yourself, and you should be, if you're going to be in amateur radio, it's certainly not a requirement. You should have a basic understanding of how electronics work, and you shouldn't be afraid of taking on repairs to your own equipment. The amateur radio hobby was founded on being available and being robust technology during a crisis situation or an emergency situation. And if you have problems with your equipment during said crisis or emergency situations, it would be handy to know how to repair that equipment. So having a decent set of rework and surface mount soldering equipment and the appropriate skill set to use said equipment is extremely beneficial. And like I said, part of that equipment, maybe maybe working underneath a microscope can be a fantastic way to do it. I personally don't like working underneath of a standard microscope. What I do is I use a microscope camera, and I just run out through HDMI to a larger display that I have on my bench. And it's important to use like an HDMI. If you want to go that route, I recommend using a HDMI camera over a USB camera, because any lag at all in the video, it's going to make it nearly impossible to work underneath. HDMI, you get almost zero lag with it, so it's extremely easy to work with SMD components in that setting. And in my opinion, in some cases it's easier than through-hole, because I've got that really large display to see these components on. My tools are appropriately sized, so in my opinion it's a lot easier. There's a bit of an investment involved there, but there's an investment in everything you do, so you just got to weigh your options or how much effort you want to put into this. Like I said, ultimately it's up to you, right? So no one can tell you have to do it this way. I can't tell you have to do it this way. This is just how I do it and how I like to do it. So now the only drawback to working underneath a microscope camera, looking at a display, is you lose your three-dimensional awareness. You lose your depth perception. So that can be a bit of a hurdle in the beginning. You'll be surprised how fast you will adjust to that. I'm at the point now where I'm not even really looking at the board or my hands or the soldering iron or whatever. I'm just looking at my display, carrying on, doing my thing. It's second nature to me now because I've done it so much. Excuse me. It wasn't always that way. In the beginning, it was really rocky. So there is a bit of a learning curve there, but with the amount of fast turnaround prototype board houses available, having a decent skill set in a PCB or circuit board piece of design software is a huge advantage. For me, I use Eagle because I use Fusion 360 for my mechanical CAD drawings, and Eagle works hand in hand with Fusion 360. So you can build up a board and then import it into Fusion and build an enclosure around it. It's super seamless. But I mean, in a couple hours, you can whip up a circuit board in Eagle. You know, export your Gerber files, upload them to whatever PCB manufacturing house you want, you know, of choice. PCBWay is a fantastic one. They're really reasonable on their prices and extremely fast turnaround. So, you know, within a couple days, you know, sometimes maybe a week, you get your board. And, you know, DigiKey is always super fast with their shipping, so you get your components and, excuse me, you know, and have at it. So, surface mount is absolutely fantastic. And there goes the train. It's just super noisy in here today. Anyway, so the surface mount is just one aspect of it, right? What other techniques or equipment are helpful? I have found recently that having a decent 3D printer is extremely helpful. You know, if you want to do fast prototyping for antenna parts or enclosure parts or whatever parts you want to make for your project, mechanical parts, 3D printer is amazing for that. Right now I have a Creality Ender 5 Plus. It does an amazing job. It's a fantastic printer. I also have the original Photon, the Anycubic Photon resin printer, and that is an absolutely amazing printer if you want to do really highly detailed parts. You know, if it's once you get a decent 3D printer, it really opens up a lot of doors for project building. You know, the days of having to, you know, in some aspects of it, I do kind of miss going down to your local Radio Shack and picking up a you know, a project box or something like that, and carrying on from there. You know, working on your project. That was a lot of fun, but it limited you because a lot of times your project revolved around what kind of project box you could find. You know, what kind of form factor it was going to take. When you have a 3D printer in your shack, now all of a sudden you don't have that limitation. You know, your enclosure can be whatever you want it to be. Like I said, now what goes along with that is having some skill set at using a 3D CAD piece of CAD software. Like I said, I use Fusion 360. You know, and there's a bit of a monthly fee for that. There's a lot now. Before everyone starts freaking out, there's a lot of free stuff out there too. You know, there's free PCB design software. There's free CAD packages out there, right? So don't panic that you're going to have to spend money on that, because you don't. If you want to go the free routes, it's perfectly fine. I've done it myself. There's a lot of great options out there. I just happen to like the user experience with Fusion. You know, Eagle and Fusion 360, they're both Autodesk products, so they work really seamlessly together. So, you know, once you build up a decent skill set in building PCBs and using a piece of 3D CAD software, man, it's really limitless what you can build. It really is, especially for amateur radio. You know, you can build a model in your CAD package in a couple hours, export it to your printer, and print your part out. And, you know, depending on the size of it, obviously how long the print takes, you know, you can go from concept to having a finished part in your hand in you know, less than a day. So it's absolutely fantastic, and the part is, like I said, exactly what you want it to be. It's not a compromise. And today's 3D printers are becoming easier and easier to use. The types of materials that you can print with, whether you want to do like a standard PLA, which is probably the most popular, is ASA, you know, which is a bit more robust. You can even do you know, flexibles. If you want to print flexible components, you can do that as well. Like I said, it's really opens up a lot of doors for you, being able to do 3D printing and stuff. You know, what else? What else can we talk about? So there's also, you know, it kind of goes along with 3D printing. You can also do like a benchtop CNC. I mean, you can get a benchtop CNC from Amazon for a couple $100. They're not fantastic, but you can get them, and that's kind of the fun part actually. Is you buy the cheap Chinese one. You know, now you got a 3D printer now, so you can make custom parts for it. You can make it better. You can make it do the things that you want it to do. You know, now all of a sudden, it gives you the ability to machine parts out of, you know, fiberboard, or in some cases, some of these machines can handle you know, the softer grades of aluminum and stuff like that. And you know, there again, it depends on how much you want to spend. You know, if you want to spend a bit more money, you can get you know, a bit nicer machine that can handle harder materials, that can cut faster, that kind of stuff. You know, you still need to know your 3D CAD to use them. But there again, now you can make you know, custom aluminum parts. You know, how cool is that? There's also laser cutters. You know, a laser cutter / engraver is absolutely amazing. If you want to make a front panel, you know, you can make a front panel out of aluminum and do custom labeling and stuff on the front of it with a laser. Oh man, it's great. Those are, you know, the CNC and the laser. They're kind of on my list of things to get. I don't have one yet. The other thing that is super useful, and I think this is kind of overlooked by a lot of hams. I shouldn't say just one more thing. There's a whole list of things that are super useful. But here's two more things that I find super useful to have, and to have a decent set of skills at. That is a Cricut cutting machine. And I know a lot of you are going to start laughing out there. Oh, those are for the XYL or whatever. Those are for the misses to do, you know, vinyl cutting and stuff like that. But man, I tell you what, for custom labeling and decals for your project, you really can't beat it. Especially if you get into the sublimation printing. You know, you can print photo quality pictures out, and you can use a heat transfer process to apply that to your front panel, and it's absolutely stunning what you can get. So, I mean, don't make fun of it until you've seen what this thing can do. All right. The other thing is a sewing machine, and I'm sure you're really laughing, right? But as far as I'm concerned, a sewing machine is just as valuable as a tool to man than any other tool in his garage or his shack. Yeah, it does take some skill to use, but if you want to build a custom carry bag for whatever project you're doing, you know, and it's not even necessarily you want to build a custom carrying bag. You know, maybe it's part of your project. You know, maybe you're making a custom liner for the lid of a Pelican case. You could have different dividers and stuff in it to store coaxes or connectors or whatever it is. You know, sewing machine can be super useful. You know, when you start getting into 3D printing with resin and stuff like that, you know, or the resin casting and things, you know, having a shop apron can be super useful, so you don't get that stuff all over your clothes. Believe me, once it's in your clothes, it's never coming out, right? So, it's kind of time to modernize the shack, I guess is what I'm saying. Time to expand the skill set. The more you expand your skill set, the more you expand the tools at your disposal, the more doors that open up for you, the more fun you're going to have in the hobby, and so on. So, and that's not to say you can't have fun in the hobby and still try to do things with, you know, little to no resources, because it can be done. It can be done quite well. But if you're into the making and the building and the, you know, taking on the bigger projects, you know, like for me, Project Redline, I'm working on a portable SDR system. You know, these kinds of tools and skills come in very useful for that. So, don't let yourself get stuck in a rut with the same old processes, the same old procedures, the same skills. You know, don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to try new things, try new tools. Like I said, I would have never have guessed that a vinyl cutting machine could be so useful to the amateur radio operator, but it is. It is extremely useful. Like I said, that sublimation printing. Go ahead and get out there on YouTube and just Google sublimation printing and Cricut. Oh man, it's amazing what this thing can do. So, get out there, try new things, learn new skills. The more skills you can acquire, the more flexible of an amateur radio operator you're going to be. You can be thrust into any situation and come out on top. It's just going to make you an all-around better person. And, like a great TV host used to say, if she doesn't find you handsome, she'll at least find you handy. So keep that in mind as well. The more skills you get, the handier you become, right? And also don't forget that duct tape. Lots and lots of duct tape. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this inspires you to not be apprehensive about expanding your skill set. Taking on the Cricut, taking on a sewing machine. Don't let the perception of it being a tool for a woman or something like that. Don't let that hold you back, because it's not just for them, right? I mean, they're just as accessible to the male amateur radio as they are the female amateur radio operator. They're fantastic things. So get out there and try new things, is what I'm saying. Modernize the hobby, right? The old tech certainly has its place. I absolutely adore my vacuum tube driven stuff. But for my daily driver equipment, man, it's modern electronics and surface mount all day long. So it's because I'm familiar with it, right? I'm not afraid to work on this stuff. I'm not afraid to build with these components. So it is what it is, man. You get in what you get out what you put in, right? So I think I've rabbled on long enough. Not quite half an hour yet, but like I said, it's the weather's nice out. It's tough to stay inside cooped up. So with that being said, I think it's time to get back out there and start doing some things. Start doing the things, as the kids say these days. Anyway, my name is Alan. N0ZFG out.